This is insane, ladies and gents. Bitcoin is trading above $93,000, and now we've got this really clear resistance zone where if Bitcoin does come back down, this can turn into one of the best trades of a lifetime, which I'm super excited for. It could, it might not, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but this area could certainly start serving as support. Bitcoin has entered kind of vertical accumulation that we've now broken out of, which I think is a really big deal. We do have this high over here, and I do want to see us breaking this high with a little bit more conviction before I can really very conclusively say that Bitcoin's back in an uptrend. But so far, we've got every single sign of that, and you know, one of the examples of that is Bitcoin's dominance. Bitcoin's dominance has clearly taken another move up here since Bitcoin has woken up and started to break its resistance levels, and each time that happens, we do tend to, you know, break our highs on Bitcoin's dominance here. So I would be expecting potentially to punch in a new high if this continues on. There's a lot more that we're going to go into here in this video. There's so much, honestly, to be packed into this, but if you are excited, do me a favor and smash up those likes, double check that you're subscribed, and most importantly, there is a ton of free cash waiting for you when you start trading using these links in the description. All you've got to do is deposit and start trading in order to get that money. So a lot of you, for example, have signed up to Blofin, but you haven't gotten a bonus yet. That's because you haven't started to trade. So check that out if you're interested, if you want some free money, because you can withdraw any of the profits you make, but only if you're not from a restricted region, only if you're allowed to by law in your country. But here's the thing, and the reason that this is so exciting to me is that now that we've finally gotten some breakout on Bitcoin, bear in mind, this is the first breakout Bitcoin's produced in like 7 days. You know, this is going to be an opportunity now to potentially start taking some trades that are safer, right? Over the last 7 days, we've seen a lot of quite dangerous opportunities, a lot of people kind of losing their money, but I think that's potentially going to be changing right here. So take a look at this. Ethereum against Bitcoin has just set a brand new low as well. This is insane, ladies and gents. We were talking about this for so long. Those of you that are watching this YouTube channel, you're going to remember literally since Ethereum was up here, you can just go back and watch my videos. I mean, it's absolutely insane how accurate we were. Since Ethereum was down up here at 0.9085 BTC per token, I was telling you that I think Ethereum can come down here. It was all the way back down there, and I said it would happen exactly like this. Is a long, slow, drawn-out bear market for Bitcoin against Ethereum. That's exactly what's happened. So smash up the likes for that, because that was so... everybody's talking about it now, but we have been forecasting this and trading based off it for 2 years, which is a hell of a lot better than everybody else. Obviously, everyone's got something to say, but when it comes to the markets actually doing something, people are usually quite silent, but we're not. We're here on this YouTube channel. Those of you that are subscribed, you're seeing the kind of gains that we're able to pull off in this market. We are making money off this shit. This trade is just an insane profit now compared to that, so that's absolutely huge. Love it. And so if we bring it back to the Bitcoin chart here, to the crypto situation here, I think that altcoins are going to be getting very interesting now. We're going to be spending some time talking about them. I got an exclusive Solana video coming out for you guys as well. If you're subscribed, you're going to be able to watch that very soon. But keeping it locked to Bitcoin here, I'm not super surprised that we're seeing this move up. If we take a look at what resulted in, what contributed to this move, obviously we've got our 4-hour EMA ribbon, which perfectly caught up to the market, and that's why we're probably able to move up now. It's because we've had that kind of time to consolidate, meet up with some of our some of our support indicators, and then continue on trading higher. On the daily time frame, we still haven't met it, and this is actually the biggest point of risk on this chart, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later on, which is just the sheer risk of Bitcoin dropping down and how catastrophic that would be. And to give you a little bit of a teaser, this is Bitcoin's Fear and Greed Index with a reading of 90 right now, which is the highest reading that we've gotten in a very long time, and it's exactly as high as we were 2 days ago. But I don't really see a reason for Bitcoin's dominance. For Fear and Greed, I can't speak now. For the Fear and Greed Index to rise this high. You know, so to me, it just shows that we're in, you know, quite a phase of irrational exuberance. And by the way, this is at a phase where altcoins are just lagging behind really hard. Bitcoin is actively setting all-time highs, but altcoins, by comparison, are very far from their all-time high in terms of total market cap. Now, if we actually look at this, that's $300 billion that it's lagging behind, which I think is a really big deal considering Bitcoin's like, you know, easily 30%, 20% above its previous all-time high now. These altcoins are still 30% away from their all-time high. They haven't even gotten there yet. So I think that that's really important that we're starting to see some, you know, signs of a very high Fear and Greed, because you don't typically spend that long up here. I got to make this very clear with you guys. When the Fear and Greed Index gets this high, it doesn't stay this high for a long time. Typically, that Fear and Greed Index is going to reset relatively quickly. It's going to start dropping down relatively quickly. The most common way for this fear and greed index to drop is for the price to drop. And that's what we're going to be talking about, like I said, in a couple of minutes in this YouTube video. So make sure you stick around for that part. Smash up the likes, double check you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that if that does sound like something that you would be interested in. But if we keep it locked here to Bitcoin, just continuing to look at this chart now, like I said, the key thing is going to be breaking this high. So far, we haven't done it with a lot of confidence yet, which I think is why we're not seeing a huge amount of follow through. But that's completely fine, because if Bitcoin does come back down here now, that's going to be the next trading opportunity to potentially go long on Bitcoin. Now, it's not perfect because, it's more of a vertical accumulation zone. You can't really just pick out one horizontal zone and say, yeah, I'm buying this level, because the whole thing has been the level and it's been diagonal. So that does make it uniquely difficult to trade. But, with low leverage or just good risk management, whatever the case may be, this is still super doable. And I know a lot of people are going to be trading it because this whole range was resistance for Bitcoin going back about 6-7 days now. And so if Bitcoin can find support, that's probably going to be what allows Bitcoin to really get above this high with some conviction. And if Bitcoin can do that, we're very quickly going to be finding ourselves in the $95,000, $96,000 price range, really knocking on the door of that $100,000 price target. And I just don't know how this is going to go, right? I mean, everybody in their NAND thinks we're going to be getting rejected at 100K, but I've been saying more and more in every single video that actually the more we find resistance in the low 90s, the less likely we are to find resistance at 100, because we've already found resistance and we're just going to be attacking it with so much bullish energy if we continue finding resistance here, because all of that supply is going to get sold off. There's only going to be demand. Nobody's going to want to sell at 93, because you got to keep in mind, if we're consolidating at 93K for a week, I think a lot of people in this market are probably going to be expecting 115, 120, 130K to start selling their Bitcoin. And so I just don't think we're going to be getting that much. I think anybody that wants to sell their Bitcoin is probably going to be selling now. But if we consolidate and then break out, there isn't going to be an appetite to sell. That's my working theory right now. I could be completely wrong, and you're going to see the result of this theory very quickly, because I think that, whatever happens with this $100,000 level, we're going to get a resolution on it probably in the next couple of weeks, max, maybe even in the next couple of days. And so you'll know very, very soon. But I just don't really see a huge amount of resistance being a problem for Bitcoin here because of all of that. And so I think that if Bitcoin can, come down here, grab some support, move up, or just conclusively break this high, that's going to be enough to really send Bitcoin significantly higher than 100,000 in my opinion. And I think that would be very, very exciting indeed. Take a look at this. We've got BlackRock's IBIT Bitcoin options going live now. So this is futures trading where they can actually go short. And it's worth noting that, the first time that, a big institution ever offered futures on Bitcoin, it was obviously the CME CBOE futures back in 2017, which are all Chicago based, and it went horribly for Bitcoin. It was the absolute top for Bitcoin's chart, and it triggered the bear market down from 20K to 3,000, and it was exactly this kind of thing that was launched when the market topped. So I'm not saying that that's going to happen again. I actually don't think that that's going to happen again right now, but if you're bearish, then you might actually think that this is concerning, so that's worth putting on your radar here. Now, if we take a look at this right here, this one's really interesting because it's showing us that if Bitcoin does kind of hold the current price level that we're at right now, because we're actually a little bit higher, this will be the highest daily close of Bitcoin ever in its history, and there are only 5 hours left until that happens. So you're going to know what's happening probably by the time that you're watching this YouTube video, but this is really interesting if Bitcoin does pull off its biggest, highest ever daily close. And of course, I think that's just going to set things very, very bullish, because you take a look at what happens, right? You break the all-time high here at 74K, immediately enter consolidation for about 4 days, and then look at the explosion that comes after that. Look at this explosion. Just, without interruption, you're up by 17% in a day. It's just absolutely insane in 2 days. And now that we've had another form of kind of consolidation, if this does kind of go the same way, if that's going to be, what was this move again? That was 17%. So if this does turn out to be a 17% move, then we're looking at, well over $100,000. And I actually think that we can get much more than a 17% move. And the reason that I think we can do better than a 17% move this time is because our consolidation was much more long-term than what we had previously, right? And it's just much bigger. We were consolidating much more. Like, this was literally just 3 daily candles here that were kind of sideways. This one's more like 8 daily candles that were sideways. So the size of this potential breakout could be even bigger, and that's also very, very exciting. Now, in line with that, traditional finance is looking good. We're continuing to see a pump up for the S&P 500 after it's come back down to this really nice zone of support. We're continuing to see it kind of move up here. So if the S&P 500 can hold on to these gains, and especially if it can sweep this high, I don't see how Bitcoin isn't going to smash through $100,000. I think at that point it's pretty much much a done deal, you know, and already it's continuing to move in the right direction. So we're gonna have to see if this continues to go in the same direction. It could get a little bit higher, find some like weird resistance up here, and then continue down. I don't think that's gonna happen, but it's worth putting it on your radar. Right now, you know, obviously the S&P 500 is a very, very simple index. It moves in very simple ways. You know, you get very, very shallow pullbacks, and then you continue shallow pullback, and then you continue shallow pullback, and then potentially continuation here. So we're going to see how that goes for the S&P 500. The dollar is not doing anything particularly interesting. We've seen it break out, and now it's finding support at this range, which could indicate that the dollar is going to be rising significantly higher, actually back up to the highs that we saw in the middle of Biden's presidency. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the highest level of the dollar index ever. Let me just double check that. No. So it did actually get higher than this. Yeah, much earlier, back in the early 2000s and in the 80s. So it was actually higher than this, but it would be the highest level at Bitcoin that the dollar would be at, you know, since Biden's presidency, or since 2002 before that. So I think that's really, really interesting. And if the dollar does continue to move up from here, you know, then for me, what gets interesting is just the potential for the dollar to drop, because I think that if the dollar does end up dropping, that could spell some really nice things for Bitcoin. Back to Bitcoin here, just as I'm speaking, look at this. We're still actively setting highs right now, pretty much just right on the edge of it. And I think that, you know, if we are able to break these highs, and that's going to be all Bitcoin needs to really rally on higher, that could get very, very exciting. Obviously, because Bitcoin's dominance is going up as we speak, this is a clear indication that while Bitcoin is getting more interesting again, altcoins are immediately becoming less interesting as a result. We understand the mechanics of why. We've been speaking about it extensively on this YouTube channel, so I'm not going to repeat it in this one. Very, very briefly, if you are curious, you know, without going into too much detail, the reason that we're seeing this is because when you make a lot of money off, you know, an asset like Bitcoin, you know, you don't really want to be in a riskier asset, right? Like if you're already able to make money from a safe asset, then why would you take on additional risk? And that's what we see with this market, and that's why we're seeing Bitcoin's dominance looking so strong right now. And so the results could mean, you know, some more kind of subsiding price action for these altcoins. So far, what we've seen, and it's really important to keep this in mind, like Matic was one of the big movers recently. And if we measure it, Matic, Polygon, whatever you want to call it, and if we measure it from its kind of low to its high right now, to its current price, over the last 2 weeks, which is, you know, the time period since Trump got elected, literally it's been 2 weeks now, you know, Matic managed to move up by 52%. And I can understand that that might sound quite exciting, but you know, this only puts Matic where it was 50 days ago, or 59 days ago, or 67, and so on, you know, 90 days ago. Matic is in the same sideways range that it's been in for 107 days, and it's really important to keep that in mind. There are big exceptions, right? Here's Cardano. Cardano is actually doing really well, but they're still so far away from their all-time. I mean, Cardano is just absolutely screwed compared to its all-time high. It's so far away. It's a 4 times gain away. It's like it hasn't even started yet. You know, if you look at it from this particular perspective. And so my point with Bitcoin and its dominance, look at this, we're at $94,000 right now. My point with Bitcoin and its dominance is that we might just see continued upward movement for these altcoins at best, but I wouldn't expect them to outstrip Bitcoin. I wouldn't expect them to outpace Bitcoin. I wouldn't expect them to outperform Bitcoin. I think that we might see them continue to gain against the dollar, but we're probably going to be seeing Bitcoin gain against the dollar a hell of a lot more. And I think that there are only going to be a few exceptions, like Doge potentially, which, you know, really has some significant upward potential here. Actually, it's actually been trading sideways very, very nicely for the last little bit, and now already kind of gearing up for another breakout. So Doge is going to be an example that could perform very well. Obviously, Solana is just like an absolute fan favorite right now. We've got a dedicated video on Solana coming out later on today, so make sure you are subscribed for that if that does sound interesting, because I'll also be telling you about how I plan on trading this Solana chart, which is arguably much, much more interesting. But this Solana chart could be, you know, a lot more likely to kind of outperform Bitcoin and, of course, the other altcoins as a result. You know, but I still think that it's all eyes on Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin does end up struggling, this is where things could get really bad. And so to kind of balance out this video now a little bit and tell you a little bit about what Bitcoin, you know, might be struggling with, you know, it is just the chance of a drop. You see, the thing about this move up is that, you know, since we've been moving up, we've just been in vertical accumulation, right? Anytime the market kind of stopped, it just slowly trended higher. It didn't actually stop moving at any point since we broke the all-time high. And so as a result, we never really established any particularly clear resistance, and so I don't expect any particularly clear support. And that's the problem, because if this does end up triggering a big drop now, like if there is a drop that gets triggered, it's probably going to be a big drop. The invalidation would probably be dropping below this yellow line, right? You drop below 91.4, and I mean, you can argue support down, you know, all the way to 86, really, you know, as we were doing before. But really, clearly, the bulk of this range stops at about 89.5, and I actually think it's very clear. I think it's clear enough to draw a line there, this is where the bulk of this kind of range stops being interesting. And so to me, if the market does kind of fall anywhere below really 90K or 89.5, anywhere kind of into this pocket or lower, I would probably expect it to be a very sizable dump, because just literally from current price, from high to low, that's going to mean already a 6% drop, which is fine. Bitcoin can tolerate a 6% drop, but if it becomes bigger than a 6% drop, you look at like more like an 8% or a 10%. I just don't see how Bitcoin can find support anywhere else, right? That's a really, really big deal. I don't see how Bitcoin can find support anywhere else, because we haven't traded anywhere else, and so it's probably going to have to drop down by quite a bit. It would definitely coincide with this fear and greed index, and that's why I'm bringing this up to you with such stark warnings right now, is that this fear and greed index is screaming that this market needs to come back down for a correction at some point. And with all of the mania going on in the altcoins, it just makes sense that things kind of cool off a little bit. I don't know how that's going to look, with the perspective of the S&P 500, but it would be very easy for us. If the S&P 500 just starts trending down back to, let's say, this green box at 5,600, which, by the way, would still be very, very bullish, then that could be what kind of really upsets Bitcoin and knocks it down by a little bit. But then again, just in terms of what would happen if Bitcoin doesn't, and this is my point, like just so I'm super, super clear, is that if Bitcoin does start dropping, I just don't expect there to be a lot of buying action to support Bitcoin right now. I think Bitcoin could drop very, very low because it hasn't established any support. So that's kind of the biggest thesis point here, which has remained consistent since we broke the all-time high. I've been saying this since we broke it. But if this does end up turning into a rejection, then down to our all-time high previously, that's going to be a 21.3% move, down to the 71K zone of support, which is great for Bitcoin. That's going to be a 24% drop. And then to our main area of support at 67, that's going to be a 28% drop. So all of those drops are very good. They're very, very healthy for the market. I would love to see the market doing them. I think some people are in disagreement with me about how much Bitcoin can drop inside of a bull market, because I'm saying Bitcoin can drop by 30%, 40%. It can still be bullish, and I'm saying that it's also likely to happen. A few people disagree with that quite strongly. Obviously, I think that they're just probably not looking at the charts realistically, or they're imagining that this time is different, which is obviously, typically quite a dangerous kind of train of thought to be led down. So I don't really engage that kind of stuff. I don't really deal with that kind of stuff. But me personally, I don't really see how it can avoid this if it does end up dropping. That's a big if it does start. I don't see how it can avoid this. But if it does do this, I mean, it would be so bullish, right? I mean, it means that you're coming back down for that kiss of life. The bears are basically given a chance to prove to us that this is a fake breakout again, and that Bitcoin is entering a bear market, and that all of these wet dreams that pessimists have of this entire global economy going down the toilet and entering a depression for the next 4 or 5 years, bears will have a chance to show us that that's true. I think they're going to fail if they try, and if they do try and fail, it's just going to make bulls so much more bullish. Because you got to think, anybody that's been selling up here, they're not going to sell if Bitcoin starts bouncing the next time, right? Like, now it's uncharted territory. But if Bitcoin does something like this, all of these price areas here are no longer uncharted territory. I would expect that we just move up really, really quickly. So it could become definitely quite explosive for these markets. And like I said, as far as trading opportunities go, the easiest one's right here, just going long off Bitcoin. Obviously, Solana's in a bull flag right now, which, obviously is quite exciting as far as trading opportunities go, because that means that, I could just theoretically enter a trade right now. Doge is looking particularly interesting because it could be ready to break out. So if it gets above this high at 43 cents, that could be very interesting. Pepe is just waking up a little bit in the wake of all of this, and it's got a big block of resistance. So if Pepe can get above this zone, or even just right here, is a potential kind of zone to be going long. There's a lot that's going on in this market right now, and the bottom line is that none of this shit is interesting if you don't have free money to trade it. But Blowfin and Bybit are giving you a ton of cash to trade these markets with. And again, the reason that this is such a big deal is that you've got your own money on the exchange, and that's great. Any profits you make, you can withdraw that. But if the exchange gives you even more money for free, then naturally you have more gains that you can potentially make and withdraw. But crucially, if you lose the money, you are not losing anything. So that's a really, really powerful offer just for that reason alone. And if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, then all you've got to do is start trading using these links in order to get your bonuses. It will only happen after you start trading, so not before you make a deposit and stuff like that. You have to, once you've signed up, that's not it. You have to start trading, but that's going to be all you need to do, and obviously only worth checking out if you're allowed to. If you're not from a restricted region, if your country's local laws and regulations allow you to, that's going to be where you can engage. Otherwise it probably wouldn't be allowed for you. But yeah, like I said, altcoin market looking interesting, Bitcoin looking interesting, dollar and S&P looking great. We just got to see how this goes, and obviously anything that happens, I'm going to be right here with you guys with a video, with a live stream, whatever you guys want. So just make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on all that stuff, and I'm going to be seeing you all in the next one. Cheers.